The Bangkok heat pressed down like a wet towel, thick and heavy even in the late afternoon. Inside a small Muay Thai gym tucked between a noodle stall and a motorcycle repair shop near the Chao Phraya River, the air smelled of sweat, liniment, and old leather. The wooden floor creaked under the rhythm of shuffling feet, the sharp slap of fists hitting pads and the steady thud of shins against heavy bags. A ceiling fan spun lazily overhead, doing little more than stirring the humidity. At the center of it all stood the trainer, lean, sun-browned, with forearms like knotted rope and eyes that missed nothing. He'd been fighting since he was a boy and teaching even longer. To his students, he was more than a coach. He was a guardian of the art. He didn't shout much. A raised eyebrow or a quiet word was enough. But when someone crossed a line, disrespected the gym, the fighters, or the discipline, he made it known, fast and firm. That day, the gym was full. Young fighters, tourists trying their first round of pad work, a few serious amateurs preparing for fights in the local stadiums. The trainer moved among them, adjusting stances, correcting elbows, nodding in approval when someone landed a clean roundhouse. Everything felt normal until the man walked in. He didn't make a sound. No loud greeting, no flashy clothes. Just a tall figure in a plain black t-shirt and dark pants, standing near the back door, arms loosely at his sides. He watched quietly, not smiling, not frowning, just observing. Most people would have stayed near the entrance, maybe snapped a photo or two. But this man stepped inside like he belonged, like he'd been there before. The trainer noticed him right away. Not because he stood out, but because he didn't. He moved with a kind of stillness that was rare in this city, like a cat waiting, not tense, just ready. His eyes followed the fighters, especially the ones working on clinch drills. When one of the younger students threw a lazy knee during a combo, the stranger's head tilted slightly, almost imperceptibly. A few minutes later, during a break, the stranger approached one of the newer students, a foreigner with bright red gloves who was holding pads for a partner. The student's elbows were flaring out too wide, weakening his guard. Without a word, the tall man reached out and gently tapped the student's forearm, guiding it inward. "Tighter," he said, voice low and calm. "Protect your ribs." The student blinked, surprised, then nodded and adjusted his stance. It was a small thing, helpful even. But to the trainer, it felt like a line had been crossed. This wasn't his gym. He didn't know the man. And in Muay Thai culture, especially in a place like this, you didn't just step in and correct someone unless you were invited, or unless you were making a statement. The trainer wiped his hands on a towel and walked over. He stopped a few feet away, arms crossed. "You know Muay Thai?" he asked in English, his tone polite but edged with challenge. The man turned. His face was calm, familiar in a way the trainer couldn't place, like someone seen on a screen long ago, half remembered. He nodded once. "A little." "A little?" the trainer repeated, raising an eyebrow. "You fix his guard like you teach here." "I don't teach," the man said. "Just trained." Long time ago, the trainer studied him. There was no arrogance in his voice, no show. But there was something underneath, something coiled, quiet, deep. The kind of presence you only saw in fighters who'd been through real battles. Not just ring matches. Still, rules were rules. This was his house. His students. His responsibility. "If you trained," the trainer said slowly, "then you know respect comes first. You don't touch my fighters unless I say so." The man didn't argue. He simply nodded again. "You're right. My mistake, that should have been the end of it." Most people would have apologized and left, but the trainer wasn't satisfied. Something about the way the man stood, balanced, grounded, utterly relaxed, itched at him. Was he testing the gym? Showing off? Or was there something else? "All right," the trainer said, stepping closer. "If you trained, show me." The man looked at him for a long moment, not with anger, not with fear, just consideration, like he was weighing the cost of what might come next. "You want to spar?" he asked. "Light," the trainer said. "Just enough to see if your little is real." Around them, the gym had gone quiet. Pads stopped slapping. Bags stopped swinging. Even the fan seemed to groan louder in the sudden stillness. Everyone knew what this meant. A challenge. Not a fight, never a real fight in this space, but a test. And in this world, tests mattered. The man exhaled softly, then pulled off his t-shirt. Underneath his frame was lean but dense with muscle, the kind built through years of hard work, not mirrors. Old scars traced his ribs and shoulders. Thin white lines that spoke of stitches, not show. He rolled his neck once, then stepped into the center of the mat. The trainer motioned for his gloves. One of the students handed him a pair of well-worn 16-ounce training gloves. The stranger accepted a pair, too, lacing them up with practiced ease. No hurry, no hesitation. They bowed to each other, as tradition demanded. Then they circled. The trainer came in fast, testing, probing. A light teep to the stomach. The stranger didn't flinch. He shifted his weight back just enough to let the kick pass harmlessly, then reset his stance. No wasted motion. No showboating. The trainer threw a jab. The man slipped it like water. Then a low kick. Blocked cleanly, shin to shin, but without the usual grunt or stagger. Just a soft thud and they were still standing. Then the trainer went for a clinch, Muay Thai's heart. He shot in, arms wide, aiming to control the head and deliver a knee. But before his hands could lock, the stranger pivoted, turned his hips and slipped inside the trainer's reach like smoke. One hand cupped the back of the trainer's head, not to strike but to guide, while the other hovered near his ribs, fingers loose, ready. It lasted less than 2 seconds. Then the stranger stepped back, hands open, palms out. The trainer froze. His breath came a little faster now, not from exertion, but from understanding. That tap near his ribs? It hadn't landed. But if it had, it would have folded him in half. The man hadn't just defended. He'd shown him exactly how vulnerable he was without throwing a single real strike. Around them, no one spoke. The student stared wide-eyed. Even the old-timer sweeping the corner had stopped, broom in hand. The trainer straightened. His pride stung, but his respect grew faster. This wasn't some tourist who'd watched a few YouTube videos. This man moved like someone who'd used these skills to survive. Not in a ring, but in places where there were no rules, no referees, no second chances. He looked the stranger in the eyes. "Who are you?" The man pulled off his gloves slowly. "Just someone who learned to listen," he said. To the body, to the silence, he didn't give a name. Didn't mention movies or fame. Just turned, picked up his shirt, and walked toward the door. The trainer watched him go, the heat pressing in again, heavier now. Something had shifted in the room, like the air after lightning before the rain. He turned back to his students, who were all looking at him, waiting. "Back to work," he said, voice rougher than usual. "And remember, real skill doesn't shout. It waits." But as the pad started slapping again, his mind kept circling back to the stranger's eyes. Calm. Sad, even. And behind that calm, something ancient and sharp, like a blade kept clean but never put away. He didn't know the man's name. Didn't know his story. But he knew one thing for sure. That quiet foreigner wasn't just passing through. He was hiding in plain sight. And whatever he was running from or protecting was far bigger than a sparring match in a Bangkok gym. The next morning came in slow and sticky. The kind of Bangkok dawn where the sky is already sweating before the sun fully rises. The gym was quiet. Just the trainer sweeping the wooden floor, the bristles of the broom scratching softly against old scuff marks and dried sweat. He hadn't slept well. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw that moment again. The stranger's hand hovering near his ribs. The calm in his eyes, the way he moved like water over stone, smooth, silent, unstoppable. He told himself it was nothing, just a skilled fighter passing through. Bangkok had plenty of those. Former soldiers, security pros, martial artists from all over the world drawn to the birthplace of Muay Thai. But this one felt different. Not flashy, not loud, just complete, like every motion had a purpose, even the ones he didn't make. By mid-morning, the gym filled again. Students trickled in, some local kids with taped-up gloves, a couple of foreigners with fresh bruises and eager smiles. The trainer ran drills like always, but his mind kept drifting. He found himself watching the door more than usual, half expecting the tall man to walk back in. He didn't. But around lunchtime, one of the younger students, a German backpacker who'd been training for 3 weeks, came up, eyes wide. "Hey, I think I know who that guy was yesterday," he said, voice hushed like he was sharing a secret. The trainer raised an eyebrow. "Who?" "The guy who sparred with you. I saw him on my phone last night. He's famous. He's in movies, The Matrix, John Wick. His name's Keanu Reeves." The trainer frowned. Keanu Reeves. The name meant nothing to him. He didn't watch Hollywood films. His world was elbows, knees, and the rhythm of the Mongkon ceremony before a fight. "An actor?" he asked, skeptical. "Yeah." but people say he's not like other actors. He's real, trains for real, does his own stunts, and he's super humble. The trainer grunted. Actors came to Bangkok all the time, posing for photos, pretending to throw a few kicks, then leaving before the real sweat started. But this man hadn't posed. He hadn't asked for anything. He'd just been there. Still something nagged at him. If the man was famous, why come alone? Why wear old clothes? Why correct a student's form like it mattered more than a selfie? That afternoon, while walking to the market for lunch, the trainer passed a small internet cafe. On a whim, he stepped inside, paid for 5 minutes, and typed the name into a search bar. Up popped a face he now recognized. Yes, that was him. Dozens of photos on red carpets in action scenes, smiling with fans. But also quieter shots. Him sitting alone on a subway, giving up his seat, handing a sandwich to someone on the street. The trainer scrolled slowly. There was something in the man's eyes in every photo, same as in the gym. Not tired exactly, just carrying something. He left the cafe thoughtful, a plastic bag of grilled chicken and sticky rice in hand. Maybe the man was just a good actor, or maybe there was more to him. Either way, the trainer couldn't shake the feeling that their encounter wasn't over. 2 days later, he got his answer. It was late evening. The gym was empty except for him, wrapping up equipment, wiping down the heavy bags. The street outside was alive with motorbike horns and the sizzle of street food stalls. Then a knock, not loud, just 3 soft raps on the side door. The trainer froze. He knew who it was before he even turned. There he stood. Same black shirt, same quiet presence. No smile, but no tension either. Just calm. You came back, the trainer said. The man nodded. I wanted to apologize properly. For what? You didn't do anything wrong. You challenged me out of respect for your house. I should have honored that first, not corrected your student. He paused. I forgot my place. The trainer studied him. Most people would have made excuses. Blame misunderstanding. But this man owned it, simply directly. All right, the trainer said finally. Apology accepted. A silence settled between them, comfortable this time. Crickets chirped outside. Somewhere down the street a dog barked. Then the man spoke again, voice low. You're a good teacher. Your students listen. They move with heart. The trainer shrugged. They work hard. That's all. They trust you. That's rare. The words hung in the air. The trainer didn't know what to say to that. So he gestured toward the mats. You want to train? Real this time. No challenge, just practice. The man's eyes softened just a little. I'd like that. They laced up gloves again, but this time there was no tension. No testing. Just 2 people moving together, sharing space, sharing rhythm. The trainer threw combinations, jabs, crosses, low kicks, and the man flowed with them, blocking, parrying, sometimes countering with gentle precision that never crossed into aggression. He used Muay Thai, yes, but blended it with something else, something fluid, almost invisible. Like he'd taken pieces from a dozen arts and stitched them into something quiet and deadly. At one point, the trainer tried a spinning elbow, a flashy move. Rarely used in real fights, but great for teaching balance. He lost his footing slightly on the turn. Before he could stumble, the man's hand was there, not grabbing, just guiding his shoulder back into line. Your base shifted too early, the man said. Wait until your hips turn. The trainer nodded, impressed. You've trained Muay Thai seriously. Years ago. In Canada, then here briefly, but life took me other places. They kept going. Sweat soaked their shirts. The fan whirred. Outside, the city buzzed on, unaware of the quiet exchange happening inside this small wooden gym. After an hour, they stopped, breathed, drank water from the same plastic bottle, passing it back and forth like old friends. Why are you really here? The trainer asked, not looking at him. Not just to apologize. The man was quiet for a long time. Then, I needed to remember what real discipline feels like. Not performance, not show, just truth. The trainer understood. In his world, too many people trained for likes, for clips, for belts. But real martial arts wasn't about that. It was about control, about knowing when to strike and when not to. You carry yourself like someone who's seen too much, the trainer said carefully. The man didn't deny it. Sometimes the quietest people have the loudest pasts. He didn't say more. Didn't need to. The trainer saw it in the way his hands rested, always ready, even at rest. In the way his eyes flicked to every exit without seeming to. This wasn't paranoia. It was habit. The kind you only get if you've had to survive. They sat on the edge of the mat, backs against the wall, watching dust float in the dim light. People talk, the trainer said after a while. Some say you're just an actor. Others say you're something else. A ghost, a legend, the man smiled faintly. Legends are stories. I'm just a man trying to do right. But you're not just anyone, the trainer pressed gently. When you moved the other day, it wasn't just skill. It was something deeper. Like you weren't fighting me, you were protecting something. The man looked at him then, really looked. And in that moment, the trainer saw it, not fear, not anger, but sorrow. Heavy old sorrow worn smooth like a river stone. I lost someone, the man said quietly. Long time ago. And after that, the world changed. Violence stopped being a choice. It became a language. The trainer didn't ask for details. He didn't need to. He'd seen that look before in fighters who'd been in real wars, not ring wars. Men who carried ghosts in their knuckles, they sat in silence for a while longer. No need for more words. Before leaving, the man stood, bowed slightly, the traditional why. Not deep, but sincere. Thank you for your time. And your honesty. The trainer returned the gesture. Come back any time. Not as a stranger. As a student, the man nodded. I will. And just like that, he was gone, melting into the Bangkok night like he'd never been there at all. But the trainer knew better. Something had shifted. Not just in the gym, but in him. He'd met someone who carried the weight of the world without letting it crush him. Someone who used his skill not to dominate, but to protect, to remember. That night, as he locked the gym door, he thought about his own students, their eagerness, their dreams of glory. He made a quiet promise to himself. He'd teach them not just how to fight, but why not to. Because real strength wasn't in how hard you hit. It was in how gently you could walk through a world that often demanded violence. And somewhere out there, a quiet man in a black shirt walked the same path, alone, but never truly lost. Days passed and the gym returned to its usual rhythm. Pads slapping, heavy bags swaying, the sharp cry of "Oi!" echoing with every clean strike. But something had changed. The trainer noticed it in himself first. He was quieter during drills, more patient when a student fumbled a combo. He found himself watching how his fighters moved not just with their bodies but with their eyes, their breath, their silence. He'd started teaching not just technique but presence, the kind he'd seen in the tall stranger. Still, he couldn't stop thinking about him. Not because of the skill, not even because of the mystery. It was the weight the man carried. Light enough not to break him, heavy enough to shape every step he took. The trainer had met tough men before, soldiers, cops, underground fighters. But this one was different. He didn't wear his past like armor. He wore it like a shadow, always there, never loud, but impossible to ignore. One afternoon, while walking to the market for fresh coconut water, the trainer took a shortcut through a narrow alley behind the old cinema. The air smelled of frying garlic and wet concrete. A few stray cats darted between plastic crates. Halfway down, he heard voices, low, tense, speaking English with sharp edges. He slowed his steps not out of curiosity but instinct. In this part of town, trouble often spoke in foreign tongues. Two men stood near a rusted fire escape, half hidden in the shade. One wore a dark suit despite the heat, the other a leather jacket with a small silver pin on the lapel. A strange detail that stuck in the trainer's mind. They weren't tourists. Their posture was too still, too alert. Heard he's been spotted near the river, the man in the suit said, voice tight. If he's here, he's off-grid. No continental contact, no check-ins. The other nodded, lighting a cigarette with steady hands. Boss says if we see him, we don't engage. Not unless we want to disappear too. Wick doesn't play games anymore, the first man muttered. Last guy who tried to track him ended up in the Chow Phraya with 3 broken ribs and no memory. The trainer froze. Wick? The name hit him like a cold splash of water. He'd heard it before, whispered by a Dutch fighter years ago, half joking. You ever see that John Wick movie? That's not fiction. That's a warning. He'd laughed it off then. But now, standing in this damp alley, hearing those words spoken like a secret code, his stomach tightened. The quiet man who corrected a student's elbow, who moved like water and carried sorrow in his eyes, was him. He didn't move, didn't breathe too loud. He stayed pressed against the wall, heart thudding, not from fear but from realization. It all fit. The scars, the stillness, the way people seemed to avoid looking directly at him even when he stood in plain sight. This wasn't just an actor on vacation. This was someone living in the spaces between worlds where rules didn't apply and mistakes were paid for in blood. The two men finished their talk and walked off in opposite directions, disappearing into the maze of Bangkok's back streets. The trainer waited a full minute before stepping out. His hands were slightly damp, not from the heat, but from the weight of what he'd just heard. He walked back to the gym slowly, mind racing. Should he say something? Warn someone? But warn who? And about what? The man hadn't done anything wrong. In fact, he'd shown more respect than most locals. If anything, he'd been kind, humble even. But the trainer also knew how stories like this ended. In his country, legends weren't just told, they were lived. And men like Wick didn't stay hidden for long. Trouble always found them, or they found it. That evening, as he locked up the gym, he made a decision. He wouldn't spread rumors, wouldn't ask questions, but he'd keep his eyes open. And if the man ever came back, he'd treat him not as a myth, but as a person, someone who'd earned the right to peace, however briefly. 2 nights later, he got his chance. He was eating dinner at a small plastic table outside his favorite street stall. Grilled fish, sticky rice, a cold bottle of water sweating in the humidity, when he saw him. The tall man sat alone at a table near the riverbank, just under a string of yellow fairy lights. He wasn't eating, just sipping tea, watching the water ripple under the moonlight. The trainer hesitated. Part of him wanted to walk over. Another part warned him to stay away. Men like that didn't need company. They needed space. But then the man looked up and saw him. Their eyes met across the narrow street. No surprise, no tension, just quiet recognition. After a moment, the man gave a small nod. That was enough. The trainer stood, picked up his plate, and walked over. Mind if I join? Please, the man said, gesturing to the empty stool. They sat in silence for a while, listening to the lapping water and the distant hum of boat engines. Fireflies blinked near the reeds. You've been thinking about what I said, the man finally offered, not looking at him. The trainer nodded. And what I heard? The man's eyes flickered just for a second. You heard something? In an alley, 2 men. Talking about a name, a long pause. Then the man set his cup down carefully. Names can be dangerous. I know, the trainer said. But I also know this, you didn't come here to cause trouble. You came to breathe. The man looked at him, then really looked. And for the first time, the trainer saw something new in his eyes. Not just sorrow, but gratitude. You're right, he said softly. I forgot what clean air felt like. They talked then, not about violence, not about the past, but about small things. The taste of lemongrass in soup. The sound of temple bells at dawn. How the river looked different in rainy season. The man spoke slowly, like each word mattered. And the trainer listened, not as a fan, not as a fighter, but as one human to another. At one point, a group of rowdy tourists passed by, laughing loudly, phones flashing. The man didn't flinch, but his shoulders tensed just slightly. The trainer noticed. He raised his hand and signaled the street vendor for 2 more bottles of water, creating a small distraction, a buffer of normalcy. The man caught the gesture. You're protecting me, he said, almost in disbelief. No, the trainer replied. I'm protecting this moment. Peace is rare. Worth guarding. The man smiled, a real one this time, small but warm. You're a good man. I try. They sat until the moon climbed higher. When it was time to go, the man stood and bowed again, deeper this time. Thank you for seeing me as I am. The trainer returned the bow, and thank you for trusting me enough to be seen. As the man walked away, blending into the night like smoke, the trainer felt something shift inside him. Not fear, not awe, but understanding. The world was full of noise, of labels, of stories people told to make sense of the unknown. But sometimes the truth was simpler. A tired man seeking quiet. A teacher offering space. 2 strangers sharing a riverbank under the same sky. Back at his apartment, the trainer lay awake for a long time. He thought about the 2 men in the alley. The silver pin, the name spoken like a curse. He knew danger was close. But he also knew something else. Real strength wasn't about fighting it. It was about holding on to humanity in the middle of it. And if that quiet man ever needed a place to rest, even for one night, this gym, this city, this river, would remember him not as a legend, but as someone who once sat under yellow lights, sipping tea, and dared to be still. The days that followed felt heavier, though nothing had changed on the surface. The gym still echoed with the familiar sounds, gloves hitting pads, the sharp exhale of fighters driving knees into the air, the steady rhythm of skipping ropes slapping the wooden floor. But the trainer moved through it all with a new kind of awareness, like he'd been handed a secret he didn't ask for but now had to carry. He didn't tell anyone what he'd overheard in the alley. Didn't mention the name. He knew better than to spread whispers that could bring unwanted attention, not just to himself, but to the quiet man who'd shown him more respect in 2 short visits than most people showed in a lifetime. Still, he kept watch. Not in a paranoid way, but with the quiet alertness of someone who understood that peace was fragile, especially for people who'd seen too much. He noticed things now, the way strangers lingered too long near the gym entrance, the occasional car that slowed as it passed by, the flicker of eyes scanning the street like they were searching for something or someone. One morning, as he was tying up a torn hand wrap, a delivery boy from the corner shop came in with a small package. "For you," he said, handing over a plain brown envelope with no return address. The trainer frowned. He didn't order anything. He opened it carefully. Inside was a single sheet of paper and a small key. The note was handwritten in neat, steady script. "If you ever need to disappear for a day, go to Soy 38 behind the old bookstore. Room 7. Leave the key under the pot." Oh, no signature. No explanation. Just that. The trainer stared at the paper for a long time. It wasn't a threat. It was an offering. A safe place. A gesture of trust so rare it felt sacred. He tucked the note into his pocket and slipped the key onto his key ring, next to the one for the gym. He didn't plan to use it, but knowing it was there, it changed something. Like he wasn't just a bystander anymore. He was part of something quiet, something real. Then, 3 days later, the man returned. It was early, just after sunrise. The streets were still damp from the night rain and the air smelled clean, almost cool. The trainer was alone in the gym sweeping the floor when the side door creaked open. There he stood, not in black this time, but in a faded gray shirt and worn jeans. He looked tired more than before. There was a fresh bruise along his jawline, faint but unmistakable, and his left hand was wrapped loosely in gauze. "You're hurt," the trainer said, setting the broom aside. "Not badly," the man replied, voice rougher than usual. "Just reminders." He didn't offer details, and the trainer didn't ask. Instead, he motioned toward the back room. "Sit. I'll get water and something for that hand." In the small storage area, just a cot, a kettle, and a shelf of liniment bottles, the trainer cleaned the man's knuckles with antiseptic. The cuts were shallow but precise, the kind made by controlled impact, not wild swinging. This man hadn't been in a brawl. He'd been in a fight where every move counted. "Why did you come back?" the trainer asked as he wrapped the hand gently with fresh gauze. The man leaned back against the wall, eyes closed for a moment. "Because I needed to say thank you. And because I wanted to give something back." He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small, worn leather journal. The cover was soft from years of use, the edges frayed. He handed it to the trainer. "What's this?" "My notes. From over the years. Not just techniques, thoughts, mistakes. Lessons learned the hard way." The trainer opened it slowly. The pages were filled with sketches, stances, transitions, breathing patterns, but also short lines written in the margins. Speed means nothing without control. Fear is useful. Panic is not. The best defense is not being there. One page near the middle read, "Violence is a language. Speak it only when silence fails." He looked up, eyes stinging slightly, not from the antiseptic, but from the weight of what he held. This wasn't just a training log. It was a map of a life lived in shadows, trying to stay human. "I can't take this," he said. "Yes, you can," the man said gently. "You already understand what it's for." They sat in silence for a while, the only sound the drip of the leaky faucet in the corner. Then the trainer spoke, voice low. "Those men in the alley, they're still looking for you, aren't they?" The man didn't deny it. "Some debts don't disappear. They just wait. But you're not running." "No," he said, opening his eyes. "I'm choosing where to stand." The trainer nodded. That was the difference, he realized. This man wasn't hiding out of fear. He was staying because he believed this place, this moment, mattered. After a while, the man stood. "I should go." "Wait," the trainer said. "Before you do, will you teach them?" "Just once, my students. Not fancy moves, just what you know about staying calm." "About seeing clearly," the man hesitated. "I don't belong in front of a class." "You belong wherever you choose to be," the trainer said. "And they need to see that real strength isn't loud." The man looked at him for a long moment. Then slowly he nodded. Later that morning, the students arrived as usual, laughing, stretching, tying their gloves. They froze when they saw the tall man standing near the mats. Arms loose at his sides, the trainer stepped forward. "Today we have a guest. He won't show you how to knock someone out. He'll show you how to stay present when everything around you is chaos." The man didn't speak at first. He just walked to the center of the mat and stood still. "Close your eyes," he said, voice calm but firm. They did. "Breathe in. 4 seconds. Hold. 4. Out. 6. He guided them through it, slow, steady breaths. Then he had them open their eyes and walk in slow circles, focusing only on the person directly ahead, ignoring distractions, noise, movement. "Your eyes tell your body what to do," he said. "If your eyes are scattered, your body is lost." He showed them how to reset after a strike, not with anger, but with breath. How to keep their guard not out of fear, but out of awareness. He didn't throw a single punch, didn't show a single flashy move. But by the end of the hour, the students stood taller, quieter, more grounded. Afterward, one of the younger fighters approached shyly. "Are you really John Wick?" The man smiled faintly. "I'm just someone who learned that the hardest fights aren't in the ring." The student nodded as if that made perfect sense. As the man prepared to leave, the trainer walked him to the door. "You'll come back?" "I don't know," he said honestly. "But if I do, it'll be because this place feels like home." The trainer placed a hand on his shoulder, brief, respectful. "Then you'll always have one, and with that..." The tall man stepped out into the Bangkok sun, not looking back, but walking like a man who finally remembered how to carry his weight without bending. The trainer watched him go, the journal tucked safely in his bag. He knew deep down this might be the last time he saw him, but that was okay. Some people don't stay. They just leave something behind that changes everything. And in the quiet of the empty gym, the trainer opened the journal again to a fresh page and wrote his own first line. "True strength is giving someone else the space to be still." The weeks that followed settled into a new kind of rhythm. The gym still buzzed with energy, gloves slapping, feet shuffling, the occasional grunt of effort, but something deeper had taken root. The students moved with more awareness now, not just throwing strikes, but listening to their own breath, watching their balance, respecting the space between action and stillness. They didn't talk much about the quiet man who'd visited, but they carried what he'd shown them in their posture, in their eyes, in the way they bowed before sparring. The trainer kept the journal on a shelf above his desk, wrapped in a cloth to keep the dust off. He didn't read it every day, but on hard mornings when the heat pressed too hard, or when a student lost a fight and blamed themselves, he'd open it to a random page. Sometimes it was a sketch of a stance, sometimes just a line. "Fall 7 times, stand up 8, but stand up calm." It never failed to steady him. He never saw the man again. No dramatic farewell. No final warning, just silence, stretching longer with each passing day. At first, the trainer checked the streets more often, glanced at every tall figure in a dark shirt. But as time went on, he stopped looking. Not because he'd forgotten, but because he understood. Some people aren't meant to stay. They're meant to pass through like wind, felt, remembered, but never held. One rainy afternoon, while sorting old equipment, he found the small key tucked in the pocket of a spare pair of shorts. He'd forgotten about it. He held it in his palm for a long moment, cool and unassuming. Then, without a word, he walked to the riverbank near Soi 38. The old bookstore was still there, its windows fogged with age. Behind it, a narrow staircase led to a row of small rooms. He climbed to the third landing, found room 7, and slipped the key under the clay pot by the door, just as the note had asked. He didn't go inside. Didn't need to. He stood there for a minute, listening to the rain patter on the tin roof, then turned and walked back to the gym. Life went on. Months passed. Tourists came and went. Fighters rose and fell. The trainer kept teaching. Not just elbows and knees, but presence, patience, the kind of discipline that doesn't need an audience. He told his students stories now. Not of knockouts or glory, but of quiet choices. Of walking away. Of protecting what matters without needing to prove anything. One evening, as he was locking up, a young woman, a new student from Sweden, hesitated before leaving. "Can I ask you something?" She said, "Of course. People say you once trained with, him. The guy from the movies." The trainer smiled faintly. "I didn't train with a movie character. I met a man who'd seen too much and still chose kindness." She nodded slowly, like she understood more than she let on. "Do you think he's still out there?" "I don't know," he said. "But I hope so. The world needs more people who know when not to fight." She left with a thoughtful look, and the trainer stood alone in the dim light of the empty gym. Outside, the city hummed, motorbikes, laughter, the distant chime of a temple bell. He walked to the center of the mat, the same spot where the man had stood months ago, and closed his eyes. He breathed in, 4 seconds, held, 4, out, 6. Just like he'd been taught, and in that quiet breath, he felt it again, not the man's presence, but the echo of what he'd left behind. A reminder that real strength isn't about how hard you hit, but how gently you move through a world that often demands violence. Years later, the gym still stands. It's a little bigger now, with a new roof and brighter lights, but the wooden floor is the same. The trainer is older, his hair more gray than black, but his eyes are just as sharp. He still teaches the same lessons, elbows tight, base low, mind clear, and every now and then, when a new student asks about the worn leather journal displayed in a glass case near the entrance, he tells them the story, not as legend, not as myth, just as truth. He walked in like any stranger, he says, voice soft but steady, but he left like a teacher. Sometimes late at night, when the gym is empty and the river glows under the moon, the trainer sits on the steps outside with a cup of tea. He doesn't expect to see the man again, but he likes to imagine him somewhere, maybe in another city, another country, sitting under different lights, breathing the same way, carrying the same quiet. And if by some chance that man ever passes through Bangkok again, he'll know where to find peace. Not because of fame or fear, but because once, in a small wooden gym by the river, someone saw him not as a ghost or a weapon, but as a human being and treated him like one. That, more than any fight, was the real victory. The trainer sips his tea, watches the water ripple and smiles. The night is calm. The city breathes. And somewhere in the spaces between noise and silence, the lesson lives on, not in fists, but in stillness. The story was supposed to end after 5 parts. There was closure. The quiet man gone, the trainer changed, the gym carrying a new kind of wisdom. But life doesn't always wrap up neatly. Sometimes long after you think a chapter is closed, it opens again, softly, unexpectedly, like a door left slightly ajar. It happened on an ordinary Tuesday nearly a year after the last sighting. The trainer was in the back room, rewrapping a torn heavy bag with duct tape and old canvas when the front door chimed, the small brass bell he'd hung years ago to announce visitors. He wiped his hands and walked out, expecting one of his regulars or maybe a curious tourist, but it wasn't either. Standing just inside the entrance was a boy. Couldn't have been more than 12. Barefoot, wearing faded shorts and a t-shirt 2 sizes too big, his skin sun-kissed and his eyes wide with a mix of fear and hope. He clutched a small cloth bundle to his chest like it was the only thing keeping him grounded. The trainer stopped. "You lost, little brother?" The boy shook his head quickly. "No, I was sent." "Sent by who?" The boy didn't answer right away. Instead, he stepped forward and placed the bundle on the nearest bench. With careful hands, he unwrapped it. Inside was a single item, a black leather glove worn smooth at the knuckles, the stitching frayed but intact. The trainer recognized it instantly. It was the same pair the quiet man had worn during their first sparring session. His breath caught. "He said you'd know," the boy whispered. The trainer picked up the glove. It was clean but carried the faint scent of river water and old sweat. Familiar, distant. Tucked into the wrist was a folded slip of paper. He opened it. He needs a place to learn, not to fight, to listen. His father is gone. His mother works nights. He watches over his sister. He's strong, but he doesn't know it yet. Teach him to be still before he learns to strike. No signature. None needed. The trainer looked at the boy, really looked. Not at his clothes or his size, but at his eyes. They were tired but clear. Alert but not angry. This wasn't a kid looking for revenge or glory. He was looking for safety, for structure, for someone to show him how to carry his weight without breaking. Your name? The trainer asked gently. The boy swallowed. Niran, the trainer blinked. It was his own name, the name his mother gave him, the name he carried like a promise. A coincidence? Maybe. Or maybe it was the quiet man's way of saying, I remember who you are. He nodded slowly. All right, Niran, take off your shirt. The boy hesitated, then pulled the oversized t-shirt over his head. His ribs were visible, his shoulders narrow, but his stance, when he stood barefoot on the mat, was already grounded. Someone had taught him to stand tall even when hungry. Ever thrown a punch? The trainer asked. No, the boy said, but I've blocked a lot. The trainer didn't ask what he meant. He didn't need to. He saw it in the slight flinch when a motorbike backfired outside, in the way his hand stayed loose but ready. This boy had learned defense before he learned to speak. Good, the trainer said. We start with breathing. And so it began, not with kicks or combos, but with silence. The trainer had the boy sit cross-legged on the mat, eyes closed, hands resting on his knees. Breathe in. 4. Hold. 4 out. 6. At first the boy fidgeted. His breath was shallow, fast. But slowly, with patient guidance, it deepened, calmed. Day after day, the boy returned. Never late, never early, always with the same quiet determination. He swept the floors before training, washed the gloves after, helped the younger kids tie their wraps. He didn't speak much, but he listened, really listened. The trainer taught him the basics, how to stand, how to guard, how to move without wasting energy. But more than that, he taught him what the quiet man had shown him, that discipline isn't about control over others, but over yourself. One afternoon, after a long session of shadowboxing, the boy asked, Did you know him? The one who sent me? The trainer paused, wiping sweat from his brow. Yes. Is he still out there? I believe so. Do you think he watches? The trainer looked out the window, at the river, the trees, the endless flow of life. I think he doesn't need to. He trusts that what he started will grow. The boy nodded, as if that made perfect sense. Months passed. The boy grew stronger, not just in muscle, but in presence. He stopped flinching at loud noises, started smiling when he landed a clean teep. Once, when a group of older boys tried to bully a younger student outside the gym, Niran didn't throw a punch. He just stepped between them, stood tall, and said, This isn't your place. They backed off, not because he threatened them, but because he wasn't afraid. The trainer watched from the doorway, pride swelling in his chest. This was it. This was the legacy, not fame, not violence, but protection. Quiet, unwavering protection. One evening, as they sat on the steps sharing a bag of roasted corn, the boy asked, Why did he choose you? The trainer chewed slowly, thinking, Because I saw him as a person, not a story. And why me? Because you're already doing what he tried to teach me, carrying others without losing yourself. The boy smiled, a real one, wide and rare. I want to be like him. You don't, the trainer said gently. You want to be like you. He just showed us both that it's possible. Years later, the boy, now a young man, stands where the trainer once stood. He teaches the same lessons in the same gym, under the same ceiling fan that still groans with every rotation. The journal is now kept in a glass case, but its teachings live in every class. And though the quiet man never returned, his presence lingers in the way students bow before sparring, in the breath before a strike, in the choice to walk away. One rainy night, long after closing, the young man finds a small envelope tucked under the gym's welcome mat. Inside is a single photograph, an old shot of the trainer and the quiet man standing side by side on the mat, gloves off, faces calm. On the back, in familiar handwriting, you kept the house. Now it's yours to guard. No name, no date, just truth. He pins the photo to the wall beside the journal, and when the next lost kid walks through the door, scared, silent, holding himself like he's made of glass, the young man smiles and says, Take off your shoes. We start with breathing, because the story never really ends. It just passes from one quiet hand to another.